Good morning, everybody. We are talking about biodiversity. What does it mean? It means there's a variety in the species, or there's a variety in all different kinds of organisms that we see in at all the different levels of the hierarchy, right? What's the hierarchy I am talking about? That is from the species level all the way to biome, right? But basically, you see the diversity at all levels, but significant of which are the genetic level, the species level, and the ecosystem, right? And we have seen how we measure the diversity, right? There are three ways that we can measure diversity: alpha, beta, and gamma. Alpha is the number of species. We just count, right? Pick at taxa, especially the tax species, and then count them. That is your alpha diversity. The beta diversity is usually between two ecosystems, and you take the unique species of those two ecosystems and count them. That is your beta diversity. The gamma diversity is the sum total of all the species present in all the ecosystems in that particular area, right? So now we know the definition, we know the different levels, we know the measures uh, the biodiversity. Now coming to the attributes of it, right? What are the attributes? There are two main attributes of biodiversity. What are they? One is the latitudinal gradient. What are latitudes? Latitudinal gradient. Now, latitudes are if this is the planet Earth, well, it's not like this, it's more round. If this is the equator, these are the latitudes. One, as we go north and so, right? And these are the poles. Okay. So, gradient means a gradual change, whether it be up or down. So here, as we go up the latitudes, we see, as we go up the latitudes, we see that the diversity decreases. Decrease. Sorry, my writing today. Okay, so, and vice versa, right? So as you're coming from the poles to the equator, then that means your diversity will go up. Why is that so? We know, so that means that in the tropics we see greater diversity. In the temperate zones you find a little less than the tropics, and as we go to the poles it gets diminished, right? And not a lot of living organisms that we see, either plant or animal. So why is this discrepancy? Why do we see such a drastic change? It's because there are three main reasons for it, for the richness of the tropics. Why? Because they were undisturbed for millions of years. There were glaciers or glaciations in the temperate zones from the poles. So they were disturbed, and speciation hasn't happened, or even if it happened, it got destroyed because of glaciers. But this in the tropics we had, or the tropics had, an undisturbed environment which led to speciation, which is one of the reasons for the diversity that we see. The second one, the second reason for this species richness is because of the predictable environment. Because of this predictable environment, because of the predictable environment, the organisms develop their own functional role in that ecosystem, which is called niche specialization. So that is another reason for the richness of the tropics, species richness in the tropics. And the third one, I need to change the pen. And the third one is color, abundant of resources. There is an abundance of resources. Now, this we should all be able to relate to it because we are living in the tropics, right? We have a lot of sunshine, we've got a lot of rain, so a lot of resources for the productivity or for the species to develop or grow. So those are the three main reasons: undisturbed environment, predictable environment, and the abundance of resources, natural resources. Um, so that is about the first attribute. Now coming to the second attribute, which is the latitudinal gradient. Now coming to the second one, it is species area relationship. Now what is the species area relationship? Before we get into the species area relationship, let's talk about species richness. Species richness means the number of species. So the more the number of species, the more the richness, species richness. Okay, this goes up, this also goes up. So there is this scientist by name Alexander Humboldt. Alexander von Humboldt. Now, according to him, this guy, he said he has done his own experiments and he concluded that when you start off, say, how do we measure the diversity? We just start counting, right? At the species level. So when you start off counting the species richness will grow, will increase as we increase the area of which we are interested in, right? But this this increase is not exponential all the way. Not exponential all the way. What does that mean? That means if we take a graph and if we plot the graph against area, your species richness will grow in the beginning, but at certain level it plateaus off, right? This is a speedy growth. Mm, Not speedy, but you find a lot more species when you start off initially. But at a certain point, it plateaus off, and there isn't a lot of increase in the number of new varieties of species that you find in that particular area. Now, this graph, this curve is non-linear. This graph is non-linear. We understand better when it is a straight line, right? This non-linear curve, okay, this a non-linear curve is called rectangular hyperbola. Rectangular hyperbola. So because it is in this, because this curve is non-linear, we're not able to understand. So what can we do? What we can do, well, for the graph, the equation is S equals CA to the power of Z or Z. This is the equation for the nonlinear curve. Because we don't understand when the curve is nonlinear, we take logarithmic scale. We take log on both sides. And the equation becomes log S equals log C plus Z log A. Z or Z log A, right? So what are all these different terms? Log S is what we are trying to find, right? Species richness. The species richness equals to C is the y-intercept. Species is the y-intercept. Z is the slope, and A is the area. Okay, so log S equals log C plus Z log A. When we take the logarithmic scale, then we get a curve which looks like this. Okay, right. Okay, so it's the same species richness on this x-axis and area on the y-axis. So this here we see the slope. This is the z. This is what we are concerned with. So for a small ecosystem, whether it be in UK or in US or in India, for a small ecosystem, the z value would be somewhere around 0.1, 0.1 to 0.2. Very small. That means it will be somewhere around here. It's very small, right? Even though we are looking at ecosystems in different geographical areas. But if we take a whole continent, like the whole of Asia, then for the value we get somewhere around 0.6 to 1.6. That means your species richness goes up significantly. Okay, and The example that they have taken the species that they counted was frugivorous birds and mammals. It's nearly 1.2. So those are the true attributes that we've looked at when it comes to biodiversity. First is the latitudinal gradient. The second is the species richness. For the latitudinal gradient, as we move up from the tropics to the poles, the diversity decreases or vice versa. The richness of the tropics is due to the undisturbed environment, the predictable environment, and an abundance of resources. That's why we find more number of species in the tropics than in the temperate zones or in the poles. The second one is the species area richness. According to Alexander von Humboldt, the richness or the diversity goes up as we start off in a given area, but at a certain point it plateaus off. And it is a nonlinear curve, the equation of which is s equals 3 times a to the power of z. Now, because it has a nonlinear scale, if we take it in a logarithmic scale, we find that log s equals log c plus z of log a, z times log a. Then we get a straight line. This gives a better understanding than the nonlinear curve. It's usually very small for smaller ecosystems or smaller areas. But if we take a whole continent, the z value or the biodiversity goes up significantly. Okay, so those are the true attributes. Now we have learned the attributes, them how we measure it, and what are the different levels in it. Now let's look at the importance of it. Why is it so important for us to look at the biodiversity? Now, still there is this guy named Tillman. He did some experiments. He did some experiments. What did he find out? He found, he found that the biodiversity actually helps in the stability of the community or the ecosystem. The more the biodiversity, the stable the community is. That's what he found out. And the experiments he did was he took a large area of land and he cut up into different plots. So it's on a large scale. Okay? And what he did was he he changed the variety species in the different plots. There are two things that he found out when it comes to the species, the variety of the species and the productivity, the relationship between the two, between biodiversity and the productivity. And he measured the productivity by the biomass, the weight of it, the weight of the product after whatever time scale that he had. So if the diversity is more, that means the species variety is more, then he said that it will be a stable environment, or it will be a stable community, or it will be a stable ecosystem. And not only that, if the diversity is more, when he measured the biomass, he said that he found that there is an increase in the biomass, that there is an increase in the productivity. We as humans, we always look at the result, right? The higher it is, the happier we are. So the biodiversity helps in this way. The more the number of species, the more the diverse the species are, the greater the productivity, the greater the biomass. And not only that, when we put in a crop, let's say it could be because of man made or natural, there are always disasters, right? They can withstand these disasters if the diversity is more. We're talking about more the diversity. What are the effects of it, right? So it'll not only be stable, the productivity will increase, and there won't be any fluctuations in the productivity. That means it will give you more or less the same product or the same biomass or the same result, irrespective of man made or natural disasters. This only happens when you have a rich, varied, um, diverse biological organisms, whether it be plants, animals, whatever it is. Okay, so this is the importance of it. Why are we so concerned about this biodiversity? The more the diverse the species in that particular area, the stable the environment would be, and more the productivity would be, and it will be the same amount of productivity over the years. There won't be a lot of fluctuation, even if there are disasters, whether it be man made or natural. So that is coming to the importance of biodiversity. Now there's another guy that we need to learn about. His name is Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich. This guy, he said, for us to understand better, he compared and he compared. Let's say this is an ecosystem. Okay? He compared an ecosystem to an airplane. Now let's see if I can draw an airplane. Okay, we got the nose, and we got the tail. It doesn't look like like looks like a worm. Okay, just imagine that this is a plane. Okay, just use your imagination that this is a plane. Okay, let's just say this is a plane. He compared these two. Okay, and he said an ecosystem is like a plane. So where does diversity come into this equation? Now he said ecosystem consists of, what does it consist of? All the biological animals and plants, living organisms, right? Basically species. Ecosystem consists of different kinds of species in an abiotic environment. An airplane consists of all the different structures we sit in, like the seat and its actual structure, the tin can that we think it is, with the wings, a tail, windows, and everything, right? So let's see what the comparison is all about. In this species, I mean, it's a functional ecosystem, it is self sustaining, and all the species interact with each other and living happily. And here we see a plane flying normally. But let's say if some of the species here die, this he compared to losing some nuts. These we call rivets. What are they called? They are called rivets. It is like losing some of the rivets. He is comparing these to an ecosystem with an airplane. So if we lose some species here, it is equivalent to losing some of the nuts here or the rivets here. So depending on where these nuts are removed from, we know how it is going to affect the plane. Let's say if we lose some of the rivets from the seat, like we have seen here, the seats come off and it'll probably take less number of passengers, right? But overall, the plane can still fly. Here also, even if we lose some of its species, the ecosystem will still be functional, right? But if let's say if we pop some of the rivets from the wings or from the tail, if we pop means remove rivets from the tail or the wings, then what happens? Then we know that the plane will crash. Why? Because those rivets, they are important to it, right? If we take the ecosystem, some of the species sometimes, it carries on the functional, it will still be a functional ecosystem. But there are some critical species in that ecosystem. If these become extinct or die off, then the equilibrium changes and it affects the ecosystem as a whole. Okay, it may not be a functional one anymore. So, who is this guy? Paul Ehrlich. He compared an ecosystem to an airplane. He said the species are like the rivet. Rivet means nut. So if we lose some of the species, the ecosystem may still be functional, nothing happens, and not a lot of disturbance. In the same way, if we lose some of the nuts inside the airplane where the machinery is, well, not the flying equipment, but where the passengers sit and stuff, it'll still be functional. It can still fly with a minimum of discomfort to the passengers. But if we lose some of the critical species in an ecosystem, the equilibrium of that ecosystem is disturbed and it affects it drastically. In the same way, if we pop rivets of importance that hold up the wings and the tails together, then there is a high probability that the plane might crash. So, what do we learn from here? That means we see that certain species, um, a diverse species, variety of species that are critical, are very important to the environment, to the ecosystem, and ultimately to the biome. Okay, so we need to conserve this environment that we are living in. It behooves us to protect the environment. So there are three different arguments regarding this biodiversity, how it is useful. We have learned the importance of the diversity. So let's look at the role it plays, of the role the biodiversity plays in our everyday lives. There are three aspects of it. One of it is broadly utilitarian. Let's go with narrowly utilitarian first. Narrowly utilitarian. Next one is broadly utilitarian. The third one is an ethical argument. Okay, so what is this narrowly utilitarian aspect of it? We get a lot of stuff from the environment or from plants usually, and also from the animals. But what do we get? We get food, the basic necessity, right? Food from crops, food. We also get shelter for the construction. We get fiber, wood, timber, and so many other industrial products like resin, latex, rubber, and we get a lot of products and a lot of different facets of our life, right? And not only that, for food, shelter, they're also useful in our health. Now, let's see. Before this English medicine came about, we always used to go to plants for their medicinal value. That's how it all started off. Now there we are producing synthetically, but um, the origins of which were always from plants. And we still go back to the plants for the drugs. One of the famous ones is vinblastine. This is from the plant Inca rosa. And we also get digitalin, and we get it from digitalis purpurea. Small lot of people. Okay, so this is a cancer drug. This is used for cardiac problems, heart problems. So we still go back to the plants for drugs. They are effective. So in the narrowly utility means usefulness. In the narrowly utilitarian aspect of this biodiversity, we find that we depend on them not only for food, for shelter, for construction, for manufacturing, for industrial products. We also use it for drugs. The popular of which is the cancer drug vinblastine and the cardiac drug digitalin. and we have Revolvia serpentina, Revolvia vomitoria. We get reserpine, which is used for blood pressure, and a lot of other things, popular of which are these. This is the narrowly utilitarian value of biodiversity. Now, when it comes to broadly utilitarian value, we find that 20% of the oxygen on this planet Earth released by forests. So we need to guard them, right? We shouldn't destroy them. And because of pollination, also, we get a lot of food, right? They say without the bees and the birds, life on earth as we know it will come to an end. Okay, so these are the broadly utilitarian values, and there is an ethical value. Ethical means moral value. That is, we are supposed to give the environment back to the future generations as is, and not destroy it with our need and greed. And we need to live with the other organisms that we are living with, the coexisting organisms, they also have a right to use this planet, right? So we with a higher intelligence shouldn't destroy them, but try to live peacefully with them and give the same environment, same resources to the next generation. Okay, with this, we can stop today.